Good afternoon. My name is Isabel Burns and today I'm your chairman. I'd like to welcome you all here to our Winter's Competition Day in the lovely village of Sutton Valence. Today our speaker is Miss Mercedes Duvall. Miss Duvall is currently studying for her A-levels with the aim of going to university to study law. She's a liberal feminist and an advocate of refugees. Mercedes is very passionate about refugees, having worked with them for the past few months. Today she will be talking about the Syrian conflict, about terrorism. Please note, some of the pictures in this PowerPoint are disturbing, but you are always free to leave, and this is the reality of what is happening in these countries.
Thank you. Today I'm here to tell you all a story. In March 2011, what was known as the Arab Spring began. The Arab Spring was a series of anti-government and pro-democracy protests, uprisings and armed rebellions that spread across the Middle East. Revolts began in Tunisia, Egypt, Libya and Yemen, toppling the current leaders. Meanwhile in Deraa, a city in southern Syria, 15 teenage boys were arrested after painting anti-government slogans on walls within their school, promoting the Arab Spring. In Britain, if boys put graffiti around their school, they may be cautioned, fined or expelled. In Syria, they were arrested and brutally tortured for their crime. The youngest, 13-year-old Hamza al-Khatib, was murdered by those who arrested him. It was his murder that was the final straw for many Syrians. Pro-democracy protests began throughout the country, and soon thousands were killed or imprisoned by security forces, which led to thousands more joining the protest. They called for President Assad to resign. The government continued to use further force to crush the protesters, which led to the government expelling protesters from the local areas, and the protesters began to form brigades. In July 2011, the rebels formed a Free Syrian Army, and the civil war in Syria had begun. Although this didn't all begin from one event, this began from decades of denied rights, freedoms, and a severe drought that plagued the country, causing poverty and a further divide in religion. The government provided no help for their starving people, and many died. Many wanted to choose their own leaders, their own laws, and live in a meritocratic society like the West. In 2012, the fighting reached Damascus and Aleppo. Thousands fled their homes, only with the clothes on their back. Those who hesitated were trapped inside the city walls starving. The fight for Aleppo had begun and thousands were going to die. Soon, America began to aid the rebels. They pushed back Assad's forces in order to allow the rebels to claim the territory. However, the rebels weren't strong enough to conquer the territory. America's partial involvement in Syria had caused a problem that would affect the entire world. In June 2014, ISIS entered the city of Mosul. They saw an opportunity and used it to their advantage. They grew by exploiting divisions and chaos within the country. Severely underestimated, they have shown their sophisticated command, control, and propaganda and logistical capabilities. Their use of modern technology separates them from other terrorist organisations, and their brutality separates them from anything defined as human. Since 2014, they have committed over 140 terrorist attacks in 29 countries other than Iraq and Syria. These attacks have killed over 2,043 people and injured thousands more. However, what people don't see is that they weren't just terrorist attacks. In Orlando, ISIS was attacking our right to be any sexual orientation we wish to be. In Paris, they weren't just attacking Charlie Hebdo journalists, they were attacking our right to free speech. And when they attacked the Vatican concert hall, they weren't just there to murder those inside, they were there to murder our culture. When they bomb our churches, synagogues and mosques, they're trying to destroy our right to choose our religion. And when they bomb our homes, they're trying to destroy the most precious thing we have, each other. And when the people of Syria flee their homes in fear, they flee their country and we reject them out of fear that a member of ISIS may be with them. Refugees are not terrorists. They are often the first victims of terrorism. You have to understand that no one puts their child in a boat unless the water is safer than the land. I have watched as those around me, family and friends, use the excuse they should really go to the nearest safe country. When 16.7 million people are displaced, does that rule still really apply? All these countries will continue to take more until they cannot take any more. But Britain, a country claiming to be compassionate, has only taken just over 7,000 with the intention of taking 20 more thousand. And when we do accept these people into our country, we approach them with a hatred in our hearts and a presumption that they are only here for our benefit system and the NHS. When in reality, many were doctors, lawyers and teachers. They fled for their lives. Do we really expect them to save their exam certificates instead of their children? In the biggest refugee crisis in the world, we are useless. We spout our hatred for immigrants, migrants, refugees and asylum seekers without really knowing what the difference is between them. We refuse to provide military help in Syria for the rebels in fear of Russia, and we refuse to allow entry of refugees in fear of terrorists. The question is, what will it take for us to make a stand? Will it take an event like 9/11 to happen in this country for us to stand up to terrorism? Will it take 2,996 people to die for us to stand up? In 20 years' time, when I have children of my own, I'd like to be able to say that I did something. I want to be able to tell my children that their mother didn't just stand there and watch a war happen and do nothing. There is a war against terror, and it's just as important as the fight against racism and the fight against sexism. There is a war and we have no option but to fight and win. I only have one question for you all today. When your future children ask what you did in the world's biggest refugee crisis, in the war against terror, what will you say?
Thank you. Now we must get on to the questions. We will first go to Mr. Rogers for a question, and then we will go to the floor for a question, and then to the judges. Mr. Rogers?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mercedes, for your speech. I believe for many people, including myself, it's a shock just how many people have died during terrorist attacks in the past few years. And I think it's very important not to allow fear to get in the way of being compassionate to human beings. But I'd like to go back to when our chairman mentioned that you, Mercedes, were a liberal feminist. What is a liberal feminist, and why are you a liberal feminist?
Thank you. Our question today is, what is a liberal feminist, and why are you one?
So, in feminism, there are multiple different types. There is postmodernist, Marxist, and radical feminism, which gives all of us a bad name. But liberal feminism is about a choice. It's about every day you make a choice about whether to make that sexist comment, about whether to hire a man instead of a woman because he looks more professional. Every day, every single person here makes a choice about whether they're going to be sexist or not. And that's why I'm a liberal feminist, because I believe that it would be a bit stupid for me to not be on my own side. I should want equality. And all the men in here should want their daughters, their wives, their aunts, their nieces to have equality too. Because it would be stupid if they didn't want them to have the same opportunities as their sons and their brothers and their fathers.
Thank you. Now, may we have any questions from the floor? No? If there are no questions, then we will proceed to the judges' questions.
I'd like to ask, do you think we should move the border back over to the Dover side of the English Channel, or leave it on the French side?
I think there needs to be a compromise. There's a limit of how many people France can take in their camps, but I think that we should move some camps into England for the simple fact that many of them are children. Over 50% of the refugees are under the age of 12. And having worked with a child who is 12 years old, who walked by himself from Syria and waited 9 months in the Calais jungle just to watch his mum and brother get murdered there, I think they should come over and they should be given help. Because at the moment he needs counselling, but there is no counselling in his language, so he will not get any counselling from it. So therefore there needs to be support in this country, because we can't pretend it's not happening here as well.
Now I'd like to introduce our proposer to the vote of thanks, Mr. Rogers.
I'd like to say a big thank you to Miss Burns for being our chairman, and to Mr. Duvall for being our speaker. It really was very shocking to see some of the pictures on your presentation, and rather thought-provoking. I'd also like to say a big thank you to the judges and to our audience. My final thank you is to Claire Eckley, without whom this competition wouldn't have happened.
Thank you all for turning up here today. It really does make coming here worth it, and I hope you took something away from Mercedes' presentation.
Thank you.